Hi, Carla and Pam, this is for you. So this is the first of the tutorials in the retreat line. So I'm going to tell you these are two little books that were actually inspired by the manufacturer DoCrafts project that they did on their website, but I've made a few tweaks because when I tried it their way, I had some issues, and so I fixed it up, made it a little better, and so this is my take on it. There are several ways that you can fold, not fold, but bind these. And so I'm going to show you, I've done two, and we're going to do the third one together. So the first one is like this, and I've done a little decorating, not a lot. So you unbind it, and it opens like this, where you can put another piece of plain paper to write a sentiment or a picture, or depending what you're using it for. Okay, and then you open it all the way up and you've got 4 pockets. So you can put tags, pictures, little messages, whatever you want in it. So that's one way, and again, it just folds in and then in, and the binding is on the outside. Now, the reason that I have the clocks on there is to obviously to hold the seam binding, and you could use any lace you wanted. I chose to use seam binding. And because I'm doing it from the outside, there was no way to tuck it inside the papers. So that's why the clocks are, I put the clocks on there to help keep that stable. Okay, so there's one way. The next way, you see, is one binding on the outside, and I'm going to untie it. And you open it, and it's page by page this time. So you open it, and here you have a pocket, then you open this one, and you have another pocket, and then you open again, and your last 2 pockets. So that's the second way of folding. Okay. Now, one of the issues I had with their website and the project that they did is when I tried folding it, it gets really, really thick. And it was splitting right where the papers meet, and I'll show you that when we actually make the project. So I put seam binding here, and that holds the pieces together better so that it does not split when you're folding, and the thickness does not become a problem. And like I said, I tried it with theirs. Now they did it with 12 by 12 paper, which I do not have. I only have the 6 by 6 in stock. But I can't imagine that it would really make that big of a difference. I really just think it's because it gets so thick. As you can see here, it's pretty thick because you've got, 4 pieces of paper basically bound up. All right, so I'm going to set that aside and we're going to get started on the project. Now what you're going to need is 3 pieces of ribbon. I chose seam binding in about 9-inch lengths, 8-inch lengths, somewhere in there. Okay. So we need that. Then we need 4 pieces of paper from the Madame Payraud's collection, which you received. And you could do them in different, you could do, 2 different pages, so you have different looks. I chose to keep them the same, so I've got 2 of this one. And then for the inside, I wanted a little plainer, and I've got 2 of this. Now, as you see on this one, I've done the same thing with the plain. But on this one, I've actually used designer paper on both sides. So it's totally up to you. You just need to choose your 4 pieces of paper. And then you'll also need a distress ink that will go with your project. I'm choosing this Worn Lipstick, which is this pink color. And had you been actually at the retreat, this would have all been provided for you. So hopefully you have some in your stash. Then you'll also need some score tape. You can use anything as long as it's at least a 1/2 inch. I'm choosing to use an inch and then the 3/8 or the 1/4, and you'll see why. I have two different sizes. And you'll need a bone folder. You will need a ruler. And then last thing you will need is a scoreboard. Okay, so I'm going to set the scoreboard to the side for right now. Oh, and a scissors. And I'm going to set all of this to the side except the paper and the score tape. That's what we're going to start with. So you're going to take your 2 pieces of paper and flip them. And it doesn't matter at this point if they're right side up or not, just so that they match. Okay, so I am going to double check that's that way. That's that way so they match. Okay, so I'm just making sure that my two pieces meet up nicely with no overlap. And then I'm going to tape down the center, and I can see that I'm already off, so I'm going to have to lift one side up a little bit, adjust it, make sure the bottom is right, and then lay it back down. Okay? And so you have to kind of be careful with this, and you may have to lift your tape up a couple of times. Just do it gently. And slide your paper together. And of course, it's always easier when you're not talking and doing it, so hopefully this goes smoother for you. But there we go. So now my two pieces have met, and I'm going to cut it off, and as close to the bottom as I can without going over. If you do go over, you can cut it off. It's just easier to try and not to. And you're going to put another piece across anyway. All right, so now I've got the center piece together, and it looks like that. Okay? I'll turn it around. It looks like that. So that's how that's going to look. Now, I'm going to make sure that I have my right side up. So this is how it looks to you. Just flip it straight over and slide it. Okay? Then put a piece of tape about halfway, it doesn't have to be exact, about halfway down the center. And you see mine's going crooked, not a big deal. It's just meant to help secure it. And again, cut it so that it's close to the bottom, but not going over if you can help it. Do the same thing on the other side over here. Okay, and I have just a tiny corner, and I don't know if you can see this, but I have a tiny corner poking over the edge. It's not really very much, so it'll be easy to pull that up and just snip it away. Okay? All right, now that those are down, I'm going to go ahead and just rub my finger over and make sure they're secure. The only one that really matters that it's straight is the center one to start with and your edges. The middle one's not so important. All right, so what you're going to have now is a 12-inch by 6-inch piece. You also have other paper in your kit, and you will have leftovers of that, so you could also take one of your sheets and cut it in half and do this, and then you would not have to use the seam binding that I'm going to show you in a little bit. But for now, we're using the Madame Payraud, and you need the two 12 by 12 sheets, or I mean two 6 by 6 sheets to make a 12 by 6 length. All right, now I'm going to go on each edge and do the same thing. I'm going to be very careful that I get it straight and pretty close to the edge, and you'll see why in a minute. So let me cut that off, and then I'll lift it up so you can see. Okay, so you can see here I've barely got any space on the end. So it's almost right to the edge. You don't want to go too close to the edge because then you risk going over, but as close as you can get. Okay, so that's one side. I'm going to go ahead and do the other. Okay, so now we've got 5 pieces of tape on our cardstock, and I'm going to zoom out now. Okay, 5 pieces of tape on our cardstock. All right, make sure they're secured down. If you want to use a bone folder for this, you can, just to go over it, make sure it's down, or you can use your fingers, however you're most comfortable. Okay, and now I'm just going to go ahead and peel these pieces off. All right, so now we have our paper with 5 pieces of score tape on it. All right, so now you need 2 of your 3 pieces of ribbon and your ruler, okay? And you're going to take your ruler and line it up with the top of your card and take your seam binding or ribbon and lay it at the 1 3/4 mark down. So between 1 3/4 and 2. Okay. All right, and I've got that on there. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Move my ruler. Okay, I'm going to line my 0 up right with the edge of the card. Take my seam binding and lay it between the, my ruler moved a little bit. Lay it between the 1 3/4 and the 2-inch mark. Okay. All right, now that we have that on there, smooth it down. And if you want to, if you're using seam binding and you have little strays, cut those off. It's not necessary. I just prefer to do that. Now you're going to take just a little piece of your tape and put it across the center of that. And that's just going to help that seam binding stay securely. Okay? And then you can lift that off and do the same to the other side. Now that those are all on there, now remember you are working with the stickiness showing, so you're gonna get stuck to it a little bit. So make sure that you don't have a lot of dust or anything on your mat when you're working, because that will get stuck in the tape and prevent, it won't show, but it will prevent it from being as sticky. So now I'm going to take the thinner one and I'm going to run it right across the top as close as I possibly can, again without going over, and I'm stuck. Like I said, that's going to happen. So just keep moving your hands and run it across that top. Now there's a little piece of dust, so I'm going to have to get that out. Okay, and when you're at the end, pull it, just pull it off. Do the same at the bottom. Now, before I go any further, I am going to double check that these are at the top, and they are. So you can see I'm backwards, but because I just flipped it forward, but they are at the top of the book, not at the bottom. And I say that only because when you go to bind it, you're folding up, those would not work. Okay, so we've got the skinny strips on, and I'm going to pull the paper off, the backing. Okay, now on this one I've got a little piece of fuzz or something, and I'm not sure if that's going to affect it or not, so I can't get it out. I think it's underneath. And so now I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom. There we go. Okay, so we have all of our sides have tape fairly close to the edge. And this is the tricky part. Now it's time to line up your paper. And I'm going to move this a little closer to me so I can see. I start at the very top with one corner and try to make it match exactly with the other corner and then slide down. And you see that worked out pretty good. Okay. I'm going to do that again, only this time I'm going to start right in the center where this one meets, because I want to make sure that these papers meet. I'm going to match up that corner with that top edge and match up the other corner. Yep. And slide down. Okay. Now, as you can see, I didn't get it perfect, so I have a little bit of a white edge here, and I'm going to just trim that off with the scissors. So I'm just going to take my scissors and go right along the edge, but be really careful that you don't cut that seam binding. Extra edge off, and I'm going to check my other edges. The other edges all look good, so it's very possible that that page was just slightly bigger. All right, so now we've got that all together, and I'm just going to rub my hands over it to make sure that it's all secure. Okay, now is the time we need our scoreboard. And I'm going to go ahead and pull my scoreboard out here. And you're going to take it and go, with your seam binding closest to the edge. Okay, like that. So. and take my bone folder, and I'm going to find the, now the other ones I did at the 3.5 mark. I'm going to recommend though from practice that you use the 4 mark or you use the 3 mark. And the reason I say that is because you're going to get a better size fold. So if you want a smaller fold, use the 4. If you want an even bigger fold than what we had, use the 3. I prefer the smaller fold, and again, this just comes from experiment and trying. So I'm going to hold it against there tight and just score it at the 4 mark all the way across the paper. Okay, and I'm going to go back and just redo it. Just to give me a better score. Okay? All right. Get the scoreboard out of the way because that's all you need it for. And I'm going to lift this up. I don't know. Yeah, you can see. There's my score mark. Okay? So at this point, we're going to go ahead and distress some of our edges. So I'm going to do all of the outer edges. And I don't want it heavy. I just want a little bit of that touch of pink from those roses. So I'm just putting a little bit on. And be careful, you don't want to get your, you know, a lot of pink on your other, or a lot of whatever color you chose on your other side. So you might want to have to wipe in between. And on this, where the seam binding is, I'm just going to pull it back and do the same on the other side, pull it back, and that just gets that little area. Okay, and I'm going to continue on. And remember, this is just an accent, so you can put as much or as little as you want on. You can go back and readjust if you don't like an area. Distressing is just about blending. That's really all it is. And I'm going to wipe this. Now, you should use a towel or something. I'm just using my hands. And we're going to do the same thing to this side. So we're going to go right up against the edge. You can see that really blends in nicely with that pink rose right there. All right, so I've got all the edges distressed. Now I want to take it and I want to run it right along the edge just to make sure there's no white showing on my edges. We've done that much. Now set your ink aside, but you are going to need it again. All right, let's see. I had a rag. I don't know what happened to it though. So I guess I'll just use my hands again. Must have fallen on the floor. Out of my reach. All right, so now we're going to place this back with the front down. Okay, and we're going to take our scissors, or you can use an X-Acto knife if you prefer. And we're going to take this and cut between the 2 pages. So we're cutting that tape right up to where your score line is, but no further. Okay. You're going to fold up your edges like this. Just fold them up. Okay, and then put them back down. Now, take your corner and fold it up so it meets that line where you just folded. So where your score was. And then take your bone folder and go right along the edge. And really, you know, I mean, don't rip your paper, but push kind of hard so you get a nice crisp line, because it is so thick it's going to be difficult. Now you can see here as I did that, this slid apart just a tiny bit. That's going to happen, unfortunately. And I have not found a way around it. Okay, so now I'm going to go and do the same thing on the other corner. Okay, so when I lift it up, it's going to look like that. If you did the 3.5, it would be about here. If you did the 4, it would be about here. So it just depends how high and how long you want. All right, and we're going to do the same to the other side. And you want to try and make sure that your two corners in the center here match pretty well. And I'm having a little difficulty, so I'm going to put my fingernail right there. There we go. Okay, use my bone folder to press that down. Okay, and the same with the other side. Bring it up to that score line, push it down. Sorry, I'm out of camera range. And do the same thing again with my bone folder. Press it down really good. Okay, now we're going to open those flaps back up. And you don't need to worry about these because these are going to get hidden when it's folded, so don't worry about distressing those. Take a little bit of tape and the amount of tape will depend on how wide you make your score for your folds. And just kind of stick it in the corner there like that. And the reason why is because we want these to be secured down here so that when we fold it up, this is actually, you know, our pocket, not this. Okay, we're going to do that on all 4 pieces. They're down good. I'm just going to run my bone folder to make sure. Okay, and then peel off your backing. And I usually do 2 at a time. Fold it up, press it down, use my bone folder to make it stick really well. Again, fold up, stick it down. Okay, and then we'll do the other side. The beginning of our book. Okay, so it looks like that. All right, now on this one where the 2 pieces fold in together, okay, you are going to be folding these both this way, and then the center would fold again. On this one, you're going to fold this one this way and this one this way. Oh, sorry. You're going to fold this one this way, then you would fold it this way, and then you would fold this over the top. So it depends on how you're doing it. For this one, I'm going to do it just like they did on the DoCrafts one because this is the 3rd style. And I'm going to fold this backwards on each other. So it's like this. And I'm going to fold it kind of like near a paper airplane. So I'm going to lift this up, match up my edges. Okay, use my bone folder, start in the center and work out. And the reason you start in the center is because you want to make sure that it goes straight. If you start on one side, it can easily go crooked. Okay, so I've pushed that down, and I'm just going to, without pushing extraordinarily hard, I'm going to try and crease that. And then I'm going to open it and go from the other side and crease it. Okay, so we have as sharp of a edge as we can for the thickness. As you see, that's pretty thick because you're looking at 4 pieces of paper folded there, and that just really does make it thick. Okay, so this is where we are. This would be our paper airplane start. Okay, flip it over and do the same thing. Bring this side to this side. Okay, start in the center, get your bone folder, and crease it. And if you aren't exact, it's okay. You can adjust and go back like I'm doing right now. And get that as straight as you can. And it's not going to, you know, it's never going to be perfect, let's face it. Okay, and then I'm going to open it up again. And I'm going to crease on this side. And so now this is what it looks like. We've got the paper airplane, basically. Okay. All right, so now you're going to open it back up, lay it flat, and now you're going to lift this up, and you can see that you've got a line here. Now it's going to be going the wrong direction, but that's okay because what you're going to do is fold it like that. So one side will be the right direction and one side will not. All right, now you need your thinner score tape, and you're going to put a strip right starting at the score line that you made to begin with, and go straight down that new score line that you made. So one is vertical and one is horizontal. Okay, so you want to put it on like that. Secure that really good. Lift your backing, and now you're going to fold that up. Okay, and don't worry, like I said, that the score lines are going the other direction. And now we're going to come across here and try and score that. And as you see, just scoring it like this is giving the paper a little bit of roughness, but that's okay because we want that distressed old look, and we're going to use distressed ink on it. Okay, so now that is secured and we have two pockets. All right, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. The reason you want the thinner tape is because if you use the wide tape, your pocket is going to be, you know, not as, you're going to have less room here in your pocket because your tape would come out to like here, where this gives you a little more playroom. Now we're going to come back and we're going to distress these pocket edges and this bottom edge. So I'm going to take my ink and I'm going to lift up a little bit on it like this so that I can get in there and distress the edge. And you can go back and just lightly touch the top if you want. And I'm going to actually go back a little bit in this area too, make it just a tad heavier. Okay, and now I'm going to do the other side, same way. Just go up and down the edge, and then go back in and spread a little bit. Okay, so now we'll do the other side. And now we're going to do this bottom. And I'm just going to lay this flat and do it just like we did before. Over and repeat the process on the other side. I won't need to do as heavy because it's, you know, a little bit has bled over when we went on the edge, but I need to spread some. Now I got a bit heavy on the bottom, so I'm just going to go back and add a little more on the top. And again, just do it until it's to your desired effect and how you feel comfortable. All right, there we go. Okay, now we will use that again one more time, but I'm setting it aside for now. Okay, so on this one, you're actually going to fold it. Okay, so we're going to fold it back on itself like this, so your pockets are on the outside, and then we're going to fold over. And over, okay? I'm going to go back with my bone folder, and I'm just going to press down fairly hard to get as crisp a crease as I can on these folds. And again, it's going to be very thick, so it's, you know, you're not going to get a super crisp edge. Okay, so we're just doing the best we can. All right, and so there's the beginning of our little book. Now, this is their version, okay? And this center part, I find, starts to tear because we've cut into that tape that we secured it with. So what I've done is taken my third piece of seam binding, and I started not quite at the top. Actually, I did that on the outside, sorry. Not quite at the top, but close. So you've got maybe half an inch, okay? So that's how you want to lay it. So you need your, you lay it flat, and you need your skinny tape again. And you're going to go on either edge, right along the length of it. and adjust as needed. Okay, and we're going to do the other side. All right, so we're going to secure those down really good, and I'm just going to run my fingernail across it. Okay, I'm going to set that aside for a second, and now we're going to put one piece right down the center. And I prefer to do it on the outside first, but you can do it on the inside if you want the fold there, and I'll show you what I mean by the fold. Okay, so I've got that right down the center. Tear that off. Okay, I'm going to secure it down, and now I'm going to peel the backing off. Okay, now we're going to make sure that there are no strays, so I'm just going to take the edge and cut it flat so that I have no flyaways. And now I'm going to peel back my tape. You can use glue for this as well. It's just going to show more because it will, you know, make your tape just doesn't stick all that great to fabric, but it will make it show. So see, I'm pulling that off and it's coming right off, so I've got to make sure that it's down and secure. Sorry, out of focus again, or out of camera range I mean. So I'm just going to try and get the edge to come loose but still stick to, there we go, to the lace or seam binding. Okay, so I'm going to pull that off. Repeat the process on the other side. Okay, there we go. Okay, so you can see kind of the shine on it, and that's the tape. So now I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to lay it across here. And again, remember, we're going to go slightly below the top. Okay, and don't worry if you get little strands like that, because we can work around that and cut it off. Okay, and I'm just going to make sure that it's stuck, all three pieces stuck well to that inner part. Okay, now we're going to turn it over, and you don't really need that center piece here. If you feel more comfortable putting it, you can. I don't feel it's necessary, so I'm just going to pull straight up and push it down, and then I'm going to come back down here and I'm going to work that in to that pocket corner. Now, this will take a little bit away from your pocket, but you can go in, you know, enough that it should not be an issue. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that's good and secure, and now I'm going to flip it back over, and this is what we have. We have this piece sticking up here. So I'm going to take my scissors now, and I'm just going to go in here and cut off that stray little piece that we had earlier, and then I'm going to bring this down, and I'm not actually going to push it down yet. I'm just going to bring it down, stick just the top, but holding up on the edge. And now I'm going to take my scissors and just cut straight across. And I want it, you know, somewhat close to the top so that you don't have your lines not way down here, because we can add something, which we will do when we decorate, to cover that line up. Okay? And now that makes that seam so much stronger, and it's not relying on just that tape that we've already cut. So you can see that. Okay? And that, my ladies, is how you make this book. So now you have one more option. When you tie it, this is going to be tied and this is going to flap open. Okay? You can put tape down here so that it stays closed and it, you know, and it opens like this, or you can let it be. That's how they did theirs. I don't like that. I'm going to put tape on mine, which is why I was playing with all the different folds so I'd have some different perspective. Yes, I'm going to cover up this pretty Eiffel Tower, but that's okay because it's on the front. All right, so I'm just going to run a piece of tape right along here, and for this you can use thick or thin, whichever you want, because I don't need it to be, you know, super secure, just a little bit. And then I'm going to run another piece along here. So again, this is totally up to you. You can leave it loose like they did, or you can secure it if you prefer it more of a book format. All right, so we've got our 2 pieces of tape on there, and I'm going to just peel these backings off. And I'm going to push this up, try and meet as much as I can, which I did a pretty good job. Okay, and now I'm going to push that together. And I'll probably just run my bone folder. Since I know it's right on the edges, I can run my bone folder right along the edge there. And same here. Okay, and now it is secured more like a book. And you see, because of the way it was folded and the pieces are exact, it actually makes that one whole piece now. Right? And so now we have an actual book, and you open it and you've got 2 pages and 2 pages. Okay? And then we would just tie it. Okay? So that is the 3 different styles of books, and I'm going to turn this off, get everything that I need for decorating, and then we'll get started on that part. Be right back. Okay, so we're back, and we are going to decorate. I'm only going to do one on camera, and just to show you some of the stuff you've got in your kit. And the rest I will do, and then I'll show you at the end of the video the still pictures of it. Okay, so in your kit you have the Clearly for Art pack. And what you need to do is use either a Xyron sticker maker, if you have that, or use a pretty strong adhesive like the Glue and Seal. I'm not sure. I can't remember if I sent you guys one of those or not. But a strong adhesive, and you may have to try more than one. I experimented with a couple of different ones, the Crystal Effects and the I can't remember the name of it, but the one everyone uses by Tim Holtz. Anyway, neither one of those held very well. The Journey glue that I buy, that did a pretty good job. Glue and Seal, though, is the one that they recommend, and again, that works beautifully. I personally found that the Xyron, if you have one, works great. So what you want to do is take an image from your paper. In this particular case, I chose a butterfly that was on one of the papers. But you could take your square like this and cut out your square, run it through your Xyron, stick it on your oh gosh, guys, I'm sorry, on your Clearly for Art paper, which is like a film, and then either cut out your image around that, which is what I did here. You can use, you know, the whole square if you want. It's totally up to you how you do it. But I wanted to use this butterfly, so I've got that on the back. Here's the Clearly for Art. I'm sure you can see it. And I've also got some adhesive. Get that off there. Like I said, I've been playing with this stuff, so I tried several different things. All right, so there's my Clearly for Art is on the back, as you see, and then the paper is on the front. Okay, so the good thing about Clearly for Art is it heats and is bendable. But before you do that, if you want to distress, you need to do that now while it's fairly flat. So I'm going to take my distress and I'm going to do it in the same color that I used on my book, which in this particular case is ground espresso. And I'm just going to go around the edges. And I want this fairly heavy because I want that dimension on that butterfly to show once I get it heated and on my book. So I'm doing those edges pretty dark. And just keep going until you get the effect that you're happy with. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. I'll set it up here so you can see, and I've got that pretty dark around the edges. Okay, now I'm going to take my heat gun, and you have to do this fairly quickly. You're going to heat it up. It takes a minute for it to get warm. It's starting to curl a little bit, and I'm just going to help it along and get it where I want it to go. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to kind of bend it right in the center, and it does get hot, so watch your fingers. Oh, I did that the wrong way. Okay, but luckily I'm doing it fast enough. Okay, so I've got that bent. I'm going to move that away and let that cool for just a second, not long. Okay, so now what I have is it looks like this. And if I don't like it, here's the miracle of this stuff. If I don't like it, you just heat it up, press it flat, and you can start all over again. So you've got a flat butterfly again, okay? So while it's still a little warm, I'm going to try and get that bend back in the center there. I don't want too much, just a little. Okay, and now I'm going to heat it up just on one side and redo these butterfly wings. Okay, and I want them to bend down just a little bit like that. Oops. Okay, I didn't have that hot enough, so heat that back up. Okay, there we go. And make sure that that bend is there. Okay, now I'm going to go to the other side and do the same thing. And I can see clearly that I did not get this one the way I want it, so I'm going to heat that back up. You can heat this 100 million times and it'll always do the same thing. It'll flatten or rebend however you want. That's the beauty of this Curly for Art stuff. I'm telling you, I love it. Okay, this corner. When it starts to curl up a little bit, you know it's hot enough for you to manipulate. I'm just going to manipulate that down a bit. Do the same thing to this side. I didn't get it quite enough. Okay, manipulate it where I want it, and you just kind of got to hold it while you're doing it until you get it to the, okay, and now it's still warm, so I can redo that center. Okay, so now I have a butterfly, and I'm pretty happy with the dimension on that. If you had a flower, you could, you know, you do one leaf at a time or one petal at a time, however you want to do it. I really was trying to stay within this paper, so this edge has this seam binding, so I don't have to worry about that, but I am going to put this on this edge. So I'm going to use my fine line topper on my glue, put a line right along the edge, and this particular one I'm trying to keep kind of vintagey looking, so sorry I didn't get a nice straight line, so I was just going back over. Always put your top right back in your glue if you have these. It's what keeps it from clogging, that wire. Okay, put my top back on. Now I'm going to put my lace across, and in this case I'm going to stretch it just a little bit, lay it down, and again I've got to hold this just for a minute until it kind of attaches. This is just adding a little something. You do not have to do this. You can use the books just as they are. This is just purely, the decorating is just purely for fun. So these edges are not wanting to stay, so I'm going to go in with a little more glue. Tack that back down. Okay. Again on this side. Center seems to be staying pretty good. It's just these edges that aren't. Okay, I'm going to hold that for a second. All right, so I'm going to let this dry completely and then we'll come back and finish. Okay, so while I was waiting for this piece to dry, I decided to go ahead and add some of that same lace over the seam binding, so that covered that area where it was overlapped, and added a little better edge. Now, I don't want to do that on the inside, obviously, because that will affect the folding. So it's just on the two outer edges, and you can see it looks like that now. Okay, and so now I'm going to go ahead and reattach that butterfly. Put that drop of glue back on there. And I'm going to let that dry, and we'll be back in a second. Okay, so you were provided with a whole bunch of flowers, and what I've done is pulled off a pale one that will go well with this. And I want it just a little bit smaller than what it is. So I'm going to just peel back some of the petals. I've cut it off, of course, from the bunch. And I'm just going to peel back a few of the petals. And you could just cut them if you chose to as well, which I may end up having to do. I'm trying to not do that, but it looks like I'm going to have to. So I'm just going to go ahead. I've peeled it back quite a bit, and now I'm just going to cut it. Okay. Get that green piece off of there. Okay, so now I'm left with this, and I'm just going to squish it and get it, to the shape that I want. Okay, that looks pretty good. Oops, uh-oh, I thought that was dry, but apparently it's not. So let me put a little more glue on there. And yes, you could use hot glue, and it would dry faster, but you know me, I don't like hot glue. So putting that back on. And then I'm going to cover this image in the center. I've got the bee here, so it will look like it's being attracted to the flower. I'm going to put this flower right here in the center. And I'm just going to spread it out just a little bit so that it sits nicely. Okay, and now I'm going to hold that while it dries, and then we will be done decorating this particular one. So I will see you in a minute. Okay, so I've got them all decorated, and I wanted to go over a few things before we start working on tags. So this is the first one. This is the one that, that we did together, and the flower is dry. I did use a little bit of distress ink on the edges of the flower, but not very much, because otherwise it could look muddy. So I just put a little bit, and I did end up putting 2 layers of the lace over the seam binding, and that covered that seam that we made, that, where it flipped over. So now you can't see that, and it just also added to the edge of the book. Okay, so that's that one. Now on this one, you saw it from when I first put the clocks on. You saw it already like that. So what I've added here is some flowers up in the corner, and I just added 1 leaf on the back to blend that together and cover that seam. Okay, now on this one, the seam actually came over the front, if you remember, and so when we put the 2 pieces together, that got covered. So this one is nice and smooth. You can see there's no line. So we don't have to do anything to the front of this. So I decided this would be a good one to show you that it can be mailed, and you can make it flat. So when you close it up on the front, in your kit you should have gotten one of these Madame Payraud embellishments, and all I did was take a piece of pink paper, and I stamped on it, glued it on the back of it, and then I glued that on here. So now this is a fairly flat piece, as you see, and could easily go through the mail. Okay, and it might weigh a little bit with this on it, so you don't have to use the metal piece, but it looks perfectly fine flat. Open it up and you put your tags in there, and you've got a nice little card for somebody. All right, so the next step is to work on tags, and I'm going to tie this one up and put it out of the way, and we will work on these one at a time. First one I've already started, and all I did was took a tag that I already had, a very small mailing tag, and I covered it with more of the Madame Payraud paper, cut around it, and now I simply have to punch a hole here and it fits right in there. Okay, now that's one size. You can also use a standard size tag like this, but we would just have to cut off the bottom. So I'm going to, I would want it to be in like this. Now I won't use this string on it, obviously, but I would put it in here and put it about where I want it, so about like that. And then I'm just going to mark where it needs to be cut. It's going to be about right there. And then I will just cut that off and cover this with paper as well. So that's really all there is to making tags. Oh, I did want to show you one. I started this one, and what I did was I took a pink tag that I had in my stash, looks like this, and I took a napkin like this, and I peeled it apart, and there was, because this particular napkin has 3 layers. Okay, so we have 1 layer, and then this layer comes apart as well. And so now you see there's 3 layers, okay? And so all I did was peel this top layer off. I put some glue across the top, and I know everybody, says you have to use decoupage, you have to use decoupage. No, you don't. Any glue will work, your glue and seal, your glossy accents, any of them. You just have to brush it out smooth, and then you just take your, I'll use a different one to show you. You just take your napkin and your single layer of it, and we'll pretend this has a pattern on it, and you just put it on your tag like that, okay? And the one thing you do not want to ever do when you're using glue is rub it, or when you're using napkins. So you want to pat it into place and get as many of the air bubbles out as you can, or you can wrinkle it. It's totally up to you, whatever kind of look you want. But do not rub, because it will rub right off and you'll have a big hole where your napkin should be. Okay, and then you let that dry. Then once it's dry, you put another layer of glue over the top. And again, it does not have to be decoupage. It can be any kind of glue, including school glue. I mean, you can use just white glue. The key is you want something, though, that's going to dry without being tacky. That's the only thing you have to worry about. So, check your glues for that. And that's it. That's just the simple answer to making tags, and you just fill up your book with tags. I would not recommend embellishing on the inside, because once you fold it, that's not going to make it fold nicely. So keep your embellishments for the outside, keep your tags for the inside flat. If you want to add a ribbon or, some twine or something, you could do that. But that's about the extent of what you're going to want to do on the inside. All right, and that is your completed little books using the Madame Payraud collection.